Thank you for attending the Grant Management Seminar. I encourage every club to consider applying for a foundation grant, either a small project using district grants or a more ambitious global grant project. During this presentation, I will give a brief introduction to the Rotary Foundation and information on how to certify your club to receive grant funds. Christy Halverson will give a detailed discussion of how to apply for and manage a district grant, and Barbara Kiernan will provide information on global grants. This slide shows the learning objectives for today's seminar. By the end of today's program, you should have all the information you need to be able to apply for and administer a grant from the Rotary Foundation. I'm Terry Bergman. I'm the Stewardship Chair for the Rotary Foundation Committee in District 5500 for the upcoming Rotary year. The stewardship role involves determining the eligibility of each club to apply for grants, to ensure that clubs document their activities, and to ensure that proper records are retained. There are three main funds in the Rotary Foundation. The first one is Annual Fund Share. That is money that we use each year for district grants. It's divided between the World Fund of Rotary International and monies that are made available to districts in relation to what they contributed to the foundation. The World Fund pays for the Rotary International share of grants, for scholarships, and for the Peace Fellow program. The second fund is the Polio Plus Fund. That is money that is spent every year on polio eradication. And the third one is the Endowment Fund. That is money that is never spent, but proceeds from the investments go to the World Fund for programs and projects that are managed by the Foundation trustees. The funds our district makes available to clubs for their grant projects come from the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation. When district Rotarians donate to the annual fund, the Foundation invests those funds for 3 years, and the majority of the administrative costs for the foundation come from the income on those investments. After the 3 years, 50% of the money stays with the foundation, and the other 50% is available as district designated funds for projects chosen by District 5500. The foundation allows the district to use a maximum of 50% of that DDF for district grants. In our district, we allocate the full 50% to projects developed by our clubs. The Foundation is the heart of Rotary's efforts to improve the lives of people around the world. While it might seem repetitive for you to take this seminar each year, program details change from year to year, so it is important to be up to date. This slide shows the requirements for your club to participate in Foundation grant projects in 24-25. First, 2 club members must attend and complete a grant management seminar or have taken the online grant management webinar, which is what you are doing today. The contact person for your district grant must complete the seminar. So on the list of people that will be shown on the website as having taken this seminar, your contact person has to be one of those people so that the person who's going to manage your grant is familiar with all of the requirements. Your club president and president-elect must sign a memorandum of understanding. For district grants, the MOU signatures will be part of the district grant application. Your club must be current in both District 5500 and Rotary International dues, and your club's president-elect must have attended the president-elect training seminar. If your president-elect did not go and you are still hoping to be able to apply for a district grant, you need to get in touch with Susan Archibald, District Governor for 2024-25, to see if there is another way that you can comply with this requirement. The Memorandum of Understanding is on the district website. It sets forth the requirements to qualify for applying for foundation funds, the responsibilities of your club officers toward the grant project, It explains what your financial management plan is for the grant funds, the accounting requirements, the requirements for document retention, and you have to agree that you would report any misuse of grant funds. This slide shows what the Memorandum of Understanding looks like. You again find it online. The Rotary Foundation takes accountability very seriously. They want to know that donor funds are being used correctly and wisely. So you must have proper financial management of your grant project so that when we get audited by the Rotary Foundation, you can show that you use the money in a proper way. You have to explain who can authorize expenditures and what the process is for doing that. You must document your expenditures, and please keep receipts. You cannot claim any expense toward your grant project if you cannot produce a receipt for the money that you spent. If you acquire any assets as part of the grant project, you must have an inventory of those and explain where they're going to be kept and how they're going to be maintained. And you must have separate records for your grant monies. You cannot intersperse them with your other club funds. The Rotary Foundation has strict requirements for record keeping and retention. This slide shows the records that must be retained by your club for 5 years for your grant project. You must keep the Memorandum of Understanding, the project needs assessment that shows how you chose the project and how you know that it was what was needed by the beneficiaries. You have to show who the beneficiaries are. Any letters of agreement that you have with other agencies. For example, if you do a project with a school and you have an agreement with a school that you're able to do that project, you must have a letter of agreement, and that needs to be part of the permanent record of your project. You have to keep your income and expense ledgers, any bank statements that relate to your project, and any record of funds transfers. So if your club, for example, does a project in Mexico and you transfer the funds to a bank in Mexico for use for the project, you must keep a record of those transfers. If you're doing a district grant starting in 24-25, those records will automatically be retained by DACDB, which is the platform that we're using to manage our district next year. Here's how to get information on district grants. You can look at on the district website. You can Google D5500 Club Grant Certification and find it, or you can reach me at the email address and phone number that's shown on this slide. I will now turn this program over to Christy.
Welcome to the District Grant Training section of the Grant Management Seminar for 2024-25. District grants are a matching grant for a small-scale, short-term, less than a year club project. As Terry went over, your club must be certified to participate. A final report from the prior year must have been approved and filed in a timely manner to apply for a new grant. Clubs are limited to one district grant at a time, unless there are funds left towards the end of a Rotary year, and then special approval can be given. You must have active club and Rotarian involvement in planning and executing the project. District grants can be used for a yearly club project if the beneficiaries are new. Rotary needs to be promoted somehow, and this can be done a number of ways. In the local press, on web pages, on Facebook, signage, plaques. It's really up to your club how you want to do it. Grant funds may not be used for vocational training teams, for microcredit projects, or for any scholarships. As in the years past, grant funds can be used for local or international projects. Although an international club may assist in a district grant project, your club is the planner, the driver, and the executor of the project. It is important to note that clubs cannot simply write a check to another nonprofit organization. Copies of all receipts for expenses must accompany the final report. The club's primary contact on a district grant application must have previewed the online grant management webinar or have taken the grant management seminar. We encourage clubs to get competitive bids on all high-dollar items. The entire district grant policy is available on the district grant webpage for your reference. This Rotary year, we had $53,200 in district grant funds for our clubs to use. This slide shows examples of some of the 22 projects with grant amounts clubs have been awarded. This is the timeline for district grants. July is the month to apply for grants from $250 to $4,000. In August, a spending plan is submitted to Rotary International, and a check for all those grants is then sent to us. By the 1st of September, we are able to turn around and mail checks to clubs. Final reports are due within 60 days of a project's completion, or definitely by May 1st of 2025. 3 years ago, $271,932 were contributed by District 5500 Rotarians to the annual fund. 75% of that money was given to the annual fund share account. That is the money we get partly back in 24-25 as district designated funds. The other 25% was given to various annual fund area of focus accounts and to disaster relief. So we will have $50,170 in grant funds to share. It is important for your club to apply for a district grant in July because in August we submit a list of all the grants to be funded to Rotary International. We need to justify the money that we are asking for. Otherwise, that DDF could go into the global grant account. This means that your club needs to be planning now for their district grant project. If you have a project planned and don't have an application in by the end of July, please contact the district grant chair and give her the project name and grant amount so those funds can be reserved for you. Our district is switching to the DACDB database management system on July 1st, and along with that we are switching to their district grant module. We had so many problems with the Club Runner module this year, we were actually planning on returning to paper applications until this decision was made. Just to take note, we will be keeping copies of all the 2023-24 Club Runner grant applications in our district Google Doc account for the required 5 years. In the next section, I will be walking through the grant application process. Our district will be giving numerous training sessions on DACDB. There will be clear instructions on the district grant webpage, a video of this grant management seminar, and in the grant navigation sidebar, there are getting started videos for both the grant application and the final report. But the very first step is that a club officer, like the president, treasurer, secretary, needs to go in and add the club member or members that will be working on the district grant. In the grant navigation sidebar, under administration, they will click on club signatures. This screenshot shows how easy signatures are added. All of your club members will be listed in the column on the left. The name of the Rotarians working on the grant are then highlighted and moved to the column on the right. To start the application process, you go to the Club Grants view in the navigation sidebar and then click on the yellow tab that says, "Click here to create a grant." Make sure you are in the 24-25 Rotary year before you create the grant. 5 tabs will now pop up: Details, Clubs Involved, Contacts, Application, and MOU. In Details, you will put the name of the project, a short description, total budget, the amount of DDF requested, the target completion date, and an area of focus. This is not a requirement, and if it is not apropos, then you would select Other. The next tab is for partnering clubs involved. All of the clubs in District 5500 are listed on the left, and you simply highlight the club and move them over to the column on the right. You would be the lead club. If there are no partnering clubs, you just continue on. Contacts are selected in the next tab. If you have a partner club, members from their club will appear on the left, and you can select the contact in that club along with any other members of your club that you want to be added to the column on the right. Finally, you have the Application tab. You will need to know the start and end date of your project, who the check is sent to and their address, along with details on the project and the number of beneficiaries served. On this tab will be the MOU, and it will show the names of your president and president-elect who need to sign it. There is a personal mail icon to the upper right of their names, which you will click on, and that will send a notice to both of them and a link to sign the MOU. When you have completed the first 5 tabs, you will save the application and 2 new tabs will appear: Budget and Documents. In the Budget tab, you will list the income amounts from your DDF, from your club, from other clubs, or from other sources. Then you list your expenses. Your income must equal expenditures. When your project is complete, you will enter the actual expenses prior to submitting your final report to the district. The Documents tab is where you can upload cooperating organization letters, estimated invoices, or any other pertinent information. Upon completion, you can add photos of Rotarian involvement in this Documents section. The next step is to sign the application. Our district will only require 1 signature to do so. Then you submit your grant for district approval. When this is done, 2 new tabs will pop up: an activity log and a signature log. This way you can keep track of who does what and when. When your grant has been approved, you'll receive an email from the district grant chair, and 2 new tabs will appear in the online application: Final Report and Expenses. When you are ready to do the final report, start with the expenses, which takes 3 steps. The first is to list all of the expenses. Then you can upload a copy of each receipt by clicking the pencil in front of the listed expense. This can be a JPEG, a PDF file, or a Word doc. Finally, you can upload a copy of the payment by check or credit card by selecting the receipts that it covers. Your receipts will automatically be referenced to the payment in the Expense tab. And copies of your receipts and checks are automatically entered into the Documents tab, so they become a part of your final report. Your final report will be populated with information from your application, so it doesn't need to be re-entered. Once you have filled out the rest of the report, click on Save. A message will come up telling you that a copy was saved in the Documents section. You then sign the final report, and off it goes to the District Grant Chair for review and approval. DACDB has a great bird's eye view system, so the District Grant Chair will always know the status of each grant and when grants will be completed. There's an automatic notification system to clubs, so contacts are always kept informed. The DACDB District Grant Module is an easy system to use, and there are a lot of training materials for you to learn about other areas in the database system. Finally, let's review how applications are approved. Once an application is submitted, the District Grant Committee will evaluate and approve each application. If district grant funds are sufficient, then all the applications will be approved. If funds are insufficient, the District Grant Committee may choose to fully or partially fund projects depending on a club's contribution the prior 2 years to the annual fund share and a club's compliance of district grant policy in prior years. The approved applications will be listed in the spending plan, which is submitted to Rotary International for its approval by August 15th. Clubs cannot start to spend money on a project until they receive their grant check the 1st of September. Well, that's about it on district grants. If you have any questions, please refer to the District 5500 grant web pages, or please contact District Grant Chair Audrey.
Welcome to the District 5500 GMS Global Grants Module. I'm Barbara Kiernan. I'm chair of the Grants Subcommittee and the Global Grants Chair. And today we're here to help you build your own very successful, very exciting global grant. As the name implies, global grants support large international activities with sustainable and measurable outcomes in one of Rotary's 7 areas of focus. They also allow clubs and districts in different countries to work together, not only to respond to real community needs, but also to strengthen our global partnerships as an international service organization. In District 5500, we support 2 different types of global grants. One is called humanitarian projects, and those are the ones that you probably are most familiar with, where we go in with our host partners and improve health, sanitation, and education, etc. But there's a caveat to this. It's very important you understand that these grants are intended to build capacity, not buildings, not buying land, and not funding another organization's projects. For example, a UNESCO project, very worthy as it might be, Rotary funds are not being used for that purpose. We also support microfinancing global grants, and those basically provide loans to low-income people. In addition, global grants can include a vocational training team. Sometimes you'll hear those referred to as VTTs. This is when groups of professionals, whether they're Rotarians or non-Rotarians, travel abroad to either teach local professionals about their own field or to learn more about that field for themselves. One of the first questions I typically get about people who want to get involved in global grants is, how do I find a good project? Well, first of all, I want to remind you that on our District 5500 website, there is a global grant page, and there's lots of resources for you to consider. Don't forget the international travel you and your colleagues and friends may undertake. What do you see? What needs have you found? Look to your club ancestry. Are there people there that come from different countries? And of course, there are lots of Rotary grant websites that you can look for projects that need help and are looking for support. And there are project fairs. For example, here in Arizona, we participate in the Mexico-USA Friendship Conference. Last year it was held in Arizona. This year it's held in Mexico, in Jalapa. That's a city near Veracruz. And for the very first time, District 5500 is going to have its own international project fair on the first day of our district conference in October. That's October the 18th. You can go and talk with people who are got different projects. They'll have a table set up. You can talk to them about what they're doing and see if there's something that might be of interest to you and your club. But one of the really interesting ways that I have found that people have come to the Global Grant Arena is because they've had already a smaller scale international effort. For example, the Tubac Rotary Club yearly supported the cleft palate, cleft lip treatment surgeries in Mexico. And this year they've turned that annual small event into a very large global grant where they're going to be looking expanding cleft palate and lip treatment in Mexico, upscaling from their annual district grant. And the Rotary Club of Tucson is doing very much the same thing. They were donating to a school in Africa that helped to support children who lived on the streets. And they've developed a very interesting project that involves vocational training in Senegal. And that's really upscaling from the donations that they were making to a school near Dakar. When you have decided to go ahead and explore a global grant, there are a couple of things that you and your clubs must do. First of all, as Terry described earlier, your club has to qualify. And you do that by having your president sign the MOU. And for 2 people, including the person who's going to be in charge of this global grant, they have to attend the grants management seminar. Secondly, you need to join with a Rotary Club in the host country that's interested in doing the global grant and actively engage with them throughout the entire process. Fortunately, we live in the 21st century, so we can visit, we can engage with them by Zoom, and don't forget that WhatsApp application for your phone. That lets all of your phone calls, and theirs too, be free. And remember that the U.S. is not always the international club. There may be very well a project right here at home that you are interested in having happen, and you can engage a club in another country to become the international club while your club becomes the host. It's not set in stone. Then it's very important that you conduct a community assessment. What Rotary is looking for here is what's important for that community. What are they interested in working on? And be sure to include the documentation of all that went on during that assessment in your application. You can use a district grant to gather that data. And what a great time for a site visit for members of your club or members of others who are interested in the global grant. And then be sure to align your project with one and only one area of focus. This is so important because each area has its own application questions and its own group of expert reviewers. And then when you've done all of this, based on that community assessment, develop a sustainable project with your partners. Once you've lined up your Rotary partners, look around the community to see if there are additional non-Rotarian partners that might be able to support what you're doing. These would be called cooperating agencies at Rotary. For example, if you're doing a project involving disease prevention and treatment, affiliating with a clinic would be a natural choice. If you're doing basic education literacy, schools would be too. All of this helps you have more hands to work on the project, more reflection from people on the ground, and literally helps you with the sustainability of the effort once Rotary leaves. Now, all along, you are going to be developing the budget of what you need to spend money on, and you need to identify funding sources for those expenditures. Your club will surely set aside funds for your global grant, and so will other clubs that have been interested in the project. And there will be some level of matching from your district and also from RI. Now, in order to get your match from the district and to begin that process, be sure to consult your District 5500 Global Grants Chair on both the project and the budget early on, as soon as you have a good idea of what you're working with. And we at the district will set aside matching funds for you. Then you need to complete the Global Grant application online in their online template. And you'll probably want to draft a one-page executive summary of your project, which I have found to be absolutely critical for continuing and maintaining communication, and especially as I try to keep on raising funds. Here's an example of an executive summary for a global grant. It's the one I wrote for my grant that I just finished in Sonora, Mexico, and I used it throughout the entire grant period, especially in the early days when I was trying to raise funds. One of the important things to notice about this is that it's one page. It's something that people really will look at and read. I don't expect you to read it from the screen, it's way too small, but I have put a copy of it on the Global Grant page so you can refer to it. But some of the important parts that it says is it describes what the purpose of the grant is. It says what the major components are. It also talks about its long-term goals. And then down toward the bottom, it goes into what was the area of focus, what is the budget, how much have we raised so far, how much is left, what's the duration, when does it start, when does it end, who are the Rotary partners, and what are the districts, and what are the supporting clubs so far. And all of that was really helpful in terms of me keeping in contact with my partners and raising future funds, raising funds for this project. And of course, because it's an international project, I found that including a map down in the bottom, along with a description of the people that were going to be served, how many villages, how many children, etc., was really compelling. And in the very bottom, of course, I told them how to get in contact with me. So one of the things about this executive summary, it's short, it's modifiable. Each time things change, you can change it. It helps you raise funds. It helps inform your friends. And it's a quick reference. So I suggest that if you do one thing at the very beginning of your grant process, think about creating an executive summary like this. Now, based on your planning, it's time to develop a written proposal by answering Rotary's questions on the online application. I find it really helpful to use a Word document at the same time so I can be developing my narrative in the Word document, sharing it with my partners, and then cutting and pasting it into the template when it's time. I can also edit it once it's in the template, but for the workaday process of developing the narrative, a Word document is very helpful. Here are some of the questions that they ask about. First of all, they want to know your area of focus, who are your Rotary and community partners and their contacts. In fact, they really want to know about all the participants, who are the community leaders, cooperating agencies, and what are the responsibilities of each of these. They want to know where the location of the project is, what are the demographics of your beneficiaries, and what are your dates? When will you start? When will you end? You'll need to include a really nice description of the project based on the community assessment, and importantly, really hone in on your goals, objectives, and action steps that you're proposing to carry out this project. Included in all of this will be description of the measures and evaluation tools that you will use to document your progress, to document outcomes, and to document the potential for sustainability. RI will give you some standard measures that you must use. In addition, you may choose a few others of your own if you want. And be sure that you develop a really tight budget. that is linked to your goals, linked to your objectives, and linked to your action steps. One of the biggest red flags for reviewers is when they find that you're proposing some action for which they cannot find a corresponding expenditure in your budget. They'll say, how are they going to pay for this? How are they going to do it? Avoid red flags at all cost. One of the most important parts of doing a global grant is raising the funds to actually carry out your proposal. And District 5500 wants you to get involved in that effort, and they want to help. And so our goal in District 5500 is actually to fund all grants with DDF, District Designated Funds. This will give you the greatest match possible from the district NRI. So how are you going to do this? First of all, clubs will donate the funds that they've raised, all of the funds for the grant, to RI's annual fund. And then District 5500 is going to replace those donated funds, dollar for dollar, with district designated funds, with DDF. And as a bonus, District 5500 will also match the first 10,000 of your raised funds with DDF calculated at 1.25%. And then when you've got all that DDF on the table, RI's World Fund then matches all your DDF at 80%. So your DDF dollars are important matches, and they increase your funding amazingly. So you should really avoid cash donations. Why? Because RI will not match any cash. And if indeed you do have cash, they will charge you 5% to administer them. So there are a couple of notes that I want you to pay attention to. One is that the global grants have a minimum budget of $30,000. And they have a maximum World Fund award of $400,000. Now, your grant could potentially go over a $400,000 level. It just simply means that RI will not match your funds above $400,000. Importantly, remember that all global grants should maintain separate bank accounts for their funds and retain all records, financial and otherwise, for 5 years. Let's talk for a moment about the completion of your online application and the final submission of it. To develop your application, go to Rotary.org, sign into My Rotary, and then scroll down to Grant Center. It's kind of in the middle of the page, and click on Apply for Grants. You can begin writing and editing at any time, but before you submit, be sure that your club, district, and partners are satisfied with your project plan and that you've contacted the district about funding. Be sure to answer every question clearly and concisely. This is not a place where length is appreciated, but completeness is. Your regional grant officer will work with you to make any changes that your application needs in order to meet the grant criteria. And I really want to encourage you to contact your regional grant officer from the very beginning, introduce yourself, and then ask questions along the way that you may have. And at the very end, when you think you're about ready to submit, ask him or her to pre-read your answers. This is very helpful and can save you a lot of time. And to edit your application once you have it opened, take the same route to Grant Center that I describe above, and then click on My Grants. Your application will be with others from District 5500. Just scroll down to find yours. So let's talk about the life cycle of a global grant. Up until now, we've been pretty much talking about all the pieces that go together to do the draft. That is the first stage. It's the longest stage. You'll probably spend a lot of time there. This includes all the planning steps that we've just talked about, including the community assessment and the district involvement. When you've got all of that planning effort put together into your narrative, go ahead and take a Word document and send it on now to your district leaders, to your board, to your president, to the district. Let them take a look at it and review your application, and this is where they will actually authorize the funding for you. When you receive your notification from the district that it is a good grant and you're ready to go, you are ready to push that magic button, submit. And when you do click on submit, I want you to know that your grant is then locked and nobody can really open it except those people who are working on it at RI. When you submit the grant, I want you to know also that this is not the end of it. Essentially, you will have reviewers looking at it and they will probably ask you questions. Revisions are very likely. But actually, this is usually a very good thing. And by the time you have answered all their questions and you've slightly revised your documents, you will probably find an improved proposal and one that you'll be proud to work on. So once then it has been approved by RI, you will get a notification that says your grant has been funded as of a certain date. And from then on, you are ready to proceed. Now, I have to tell you that when it is approved, you will be sent a check, but that funding will only be for 1 year. And they'll ask you, how much do you want for your first year? One of my suggestions to you is that because this funding is year 1 and year 2, and that the reception of a check for year 2 is predicated on the acceptance of your report for year 1, you probably want to take care to include a bit of year 2 in that initial year funding, just in case your report is either delayed on your part or their part. In any case, now that you are ready to go, your grant is approved, your first year funding is in hand, you're ready to go to work and begin the grant. So what are the timelines for submission and reporting? Well, for submission, global grant applications can actually be submitted throughout the Rotary year, and they're approved throughout the Rotary year, from July 1 through June 30th. But one of the things I would suggest is that you avoid the month of July and August, because that's when the Rotary leadership is changing across the board in many cases, and many of your signatures may be delayed for authorization. So try to submit it, avoiding those times when the Rotary year is in transition. In terms of reporting, well, your progress reports are due within 12 months of the first payment, and every 12 months thereafter throughout the terms of the grant. It's really important for you as a grant recipient to keep daily logs of what you do, keep your progress notes on your standard measures, and be sure you justify any and all changes that you make from your original proposal. And that includes if you had to go back to your regional grant officer and ask for permission to vary something that you've been doing. Be sure you keep those emails. All of this will probably be requested on your reports. Your final report is due within 2 months of completion of the grant. Well, here's a hypothetical slide about time and commitment involved. Actually, every grant is different, and yours will too, but this gives you an idea. In terms of the time involved, you are probably going to spend most of your time in the planning and fundraising stage, perhaps 12 to 18 months. Your grant writing per se in the narrative, probably about 2 or 3 months, although you'll be writing all along and revising. When you submit your papers and your application to the foundation for review, it probably will take 1 or 2 months. And usually your project is 2 years in length. That's usually what they do. In terms of commitment, well, your primary contact from the host and international clubs, along with their committee of 3 in each club, and as many other people as possible, will be actively engaged throughout these 2 years. But I can promise you that as a result of that active engagement, you are going to have a wonderfully fun and meaningful effort that will make a difference in your club's life and certainly in the community that you are serving.